Hello and welcome to I Want to Grow, and I Want to Grow is all about that, right? We all want to grow. Today we're celebrating 90 years of the British Council. Some ripples, right? But these ripples and how they've helped others, it's turned into waves. They've touched people's lives all over the globe. And today we have a special guest. We've got Fatima. Fatima, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, and thank you to the British Council as well. I'm Fatema Brahim Al Sehlawi. I'm a Qatari architect and urbanist. And should I start with my story about my story with the British Council maybe?
Yeah, start wherever you want.
The British Council, yes, we did have a lot of collaborations and we did work on a lot of projects together. But I think my relationship with the British Council started way back when I was in school. A place to go to for past papers, to take exams, to be tutored for different subjects, and just to meet a lot of friends, really. And I was always fascinated by the building the British Council was in. It was an old residential sort of palace that then turned into the British Council. And I always appreciated its architecture when I was only a student in school. So I think it's one of the buildings that sort of stayed in my mind as I then went on to study architecture after graduating from school here in Doha. And yeah, so very fond memories from the British Council.
Isn't that incredible how lives can be touched in ways you didn't expect them to be touched, right? You went for your exam results. It was the British Council. You loved the building that we're in. So what was that like to becoming an architect in Qatar?
It was a moment when it was evident that the country was going to go through a very sort of interesting and rapid and vast real estate as well as construction and development boom, right? And I think that was the moment when I knew I wanted to be part of it, and that's how I decided to study architecture. It was actually one of my favorite teachers in school, Mr. Cadic. He was an art teacher, and he really saw that I had the sort of artistic talent, but at the same time had, I was really good in maths and physics, and that the combination was architecture. And he really helped me make that decision to study architecture. So I went on, studied architecture for my bachelor's degree, and then did the master's of architecture and urban design at UCL London, at the Bartlet specifically. And it was the first week after graduating and coming back to Doha that I was working at Qatar Museums at the time. And it was the first week coming back that I got to meet the team at the British Council, and they told us about this amazing project that we were about to start as part of the Qatar UK Year of Culture in 2013. So now you know when I graduated from from my master's degree. Yeah.
Wow. I want to stay on Qatar before we jump in there and praise the British Council, because they deserve being praised. What buildings do you love in Qatar?
So I'm a 90s kid, right? So it's definitely the buildings of the 90s that I always admired. I spent a lot of time as a child with friends, with family, but that's still where my admiration is. It's for the buildings that were really built in the sort of 70s, 80s, and we got to enjoy in the 90s as well. Some of them are still around. Some of them were demolished. I must say I've been trying my best to be part of any kind of effort to rescue any of those buildings from being demolished. And I think we're seeing a lot of examples where our efforts are, very much celebrated because it just made a lot of sense. An old ministry building today is a hotel, and it makes sense,
But do you like the Ned?
I love the building, very much so.
Now
that building was going to get demolished as well. So you can just imagine how empty the corniche would have been. But I think, just preserving that building, amending it so that it can house the Ned. There's an additional floor that was added that no one can really notice because it was, I think the architect David Chipperfield designed it in a way that any addition really felt like it belonged to the original structure. And
I go in that building.
Oh, yeah?
And I try to imagine, sometimes if it's very quiet,
right,
I can be there when it was the ministry, right?
Yeah.
And I can. It's so silent. It's kind of things are happening, and it's kind of really eerie,
right,
going through. And then I look at it when it's busy, And then I think to myself, oh, wow, the building must be feeling great right now.
Right.
It must, with all this live energy and everybody's there. And especially right now, it's so busy with so many people going there. I just think that the building's going, yes, we've got life here.
It's a perfect example of how a building can have a new life and another completely different life, right? You can just imagine the people who worked there and how different the atmosphere must have been to what it is today. It was a great building as a ministry. It's a great building as not only a hotel, but really a social hub in the middle of the city, really, and the Corniche.
Yeah, I never noticed that building either. I never noticed the building, but now it's so prominent. And as I said, the energy that's there is fantastic.
Right.
It is.
We're working on many more buildings.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. I just can't wait to see. I'm going to talk now about the British Council.
Mm-hmm.
What are those things that you've been working on or you've worked on with them, and how did they have an effect on how you've developed?
I think the most important project that I would mention was the Old Doha Prize, which started in 2013. It was that week I told you about, the first week I got back from London, and it was 2 years after the country won the bid to host the World Cup. It was a moment when we knew there were a lot of changes coming to the urban fabric of the city, to the sort of barren lands surrounding the city and on its outskirts. And it was a very important realization that the center, this nucleus of the city, which is Old Doha, needed more attention and needed to be preserved as much as possible, as well as activated and regenerated. So the Old Doha Prize was all about that. It was about bringing different architects to propose ideas of how to regenerate the center of Doha, or Old Doha, in very sensitive ways, in ways that work with both the existing heritage and culture, but also what's yet to come for Qatar in our contemporary times. And it was, I think I was more on I was with Qatar Museums, and I was more on the sort of organizing side and then the advisory panel side. But to talk a little bit about how the teams came together, it was really interesting what we did. We brought architects from the UK to pair up with architects from Qatar and create these sort of UK Qatari teams that would then work for a week together, exploring the area, understanding the area, and really analyzing it and then proposing ideas for it. And I think it was beyond a design exercise. It was much more than that. It was really a cultural exchange and an exchange in design thinking as well, which was very interesting. And funnily enough, I mean, I still work on Old Doha. And so that's when it started. We did so much for the World Cup in terms of, working on Old Doha with other stakeholders, whether it's the Public Works Authority, the Ministry of Municipality, and so many others. And today we're still working on extending this plan for Old Doha and activating it in any way we can.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you're the next generation. It's like your next generation that makes a difference. I quite find it quite, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it looks like that there's a lot of Qataris that have gone into architecture.
Yes. I mean, when I went to architecture school, we didn't have an architecture program in Qatar. A few years later, the architecture program at Qatar University was created, and I think since then we've been seeing, like you said, a surge in number of architects in Qatar, but also those who have studied have gone to study abroad. It's, I mean, if you're not designing here in Qatar, where would you be designing? It's such, up to the World Cup, it was such an interesting time to be designing in Qatar, and now even more. Because I think now we're beyond the sort of large-scale architecture and we're working on smaller interventions. So any individual has the chance to have a sort of intervention, a say, an impact, and it's a very, very interesting time.
Heritage, culture, very, very important. I think, as you said, the West Bay is very nice, but we've got to now think about the heritage in the culture, right? So, and you look at some of the areas that you're working on, they're phenomenal. They really are. And looking at the way that they've all developed, it's kind of through the eyes of yourself. And I think that's great for the way that Qatar's going for the future.
for sure. And I think that's what Qatar Museums does very well. It's, it's an entity that builds new museums, but it's also an entity that has the mandate to preserve the natural heritage and the built heritage of the country. And so it's all brought together under one umbrella, and I think it all comes out at the same caliber. And so both sides have the same importance. And we're just so lucky to be part of, such projects and such developments.
Oh, yeah. So what other things have you been working on?
Over the years, I've worked on multiple projects with Qatar Museums. Most recently, right now, we're working on both trying to protect more buildings from being demolished and looking at ways of repurposing them, and looking at ways to really raise awareness about the importance of preservation in terms of architectural heritage. When I say architectural heritage, it's a building that was built with mud bricks and palm fronds and coral, but also a building that was built with concrete blocks in the 1980s or 1970s in the really modernist era of Qatar. It's important to preserve. It's important to retain this sort of multi-generational layering of architecture in the city. And a major project I'm working on now with Qatar Museums is the Qatar Blueprint. It's a very interesting project. It's a countrywide survey and activation attempt looking at the different municipalities of Qatar, and not only Doha. So we have 8 different municipalities, but can we name them all? Not everyone can. So soon, hopefully you will be able to, because you'll know much more about each different municipality. We're looking at what exists in every municipality. We're not creating, we're not starting from a blank canvas. We're looking at what exists in terms of natural assets, built assets, social assets, and looking at how we can bring everything together and activate them so that every municipality has its own character, its own identity. It builds on its past history, and that, we're not just giving our backs to all the different municipalities and focusing on Doha only. And so it starts from that scale, and then it zooms down all the way to this micro scale of, for example, the vicinity around the National Museum of Qatar. We've built an incredible museum. It's time to show the impact, or what the impact of a museum can be on the neighboring district, and vice versa, what the impact of the existing population, existing sort of social fabric and urban fabric of the immediate context of the museum, how that can impact the museum itself. So we're working on multiple scales.
I think one of your skills is being determined, right?
Yes, for sure.
You strike me as a very determined person.
Yeah.
And very passionate about what you do.
Very much so.
It shines through, let me tell you.
Very much so.
As a director of the Qatar Blueprint, how do you see the future design initiatives evolving in terms of linking Qatari and international design perspectives?
I mean, since early times, any architectural development, as modest as it was in the beginnings of sort of building the settlements in Qatar into towns and then eventually into cities, it was always an international effort. You had people from Qatar exchanging knowledge with people from other countries, many other countries. I would say the earliest maybe was starting with knowledge from across the border in Saudi Arabia, knowledge from across the Gulf, Iran, Pakistan, India, craftsmanship, building knowledge, construction knowledge, but also sort of building and architectural aesthetics and decorations, color and architecture came in from there as well. So it was always this sort of exchange. And then later on, maybe if I jumped, say, to the 1950s and 60s, it was very much sort of pan-Arab as well. Engineers from Egypt, from Lebanon, from Syria. A few decades later, it was more international. It was sort of a deliberate attempt to bring in an international group of architects to work on the buildings along the Corniche. You had a Japanese architect, you had a British architect, you had an American architect. So it was very international. And today we see it all coming together. Today I work with architects through Qatar Museums. I work with architects from all over the world, and in every project, when we do architectural competitions, that's a must. It's almost, we were told the other day, it's almost like we're building a UN council, but it's not. We just really want to bring in architects from from across different continents and learn from them and have them learn from Qatar. And that's very important.
The knowledge sharing must be the best of the best.
Yes, of course.
You've experienced this. Was it difficult to listen to other people's views, or was it an easy process, or was it difficult?
I think it's always difficult, and it's an interesting position that I hold at Qatar Museums, where I'm on the client side rather than being the architect and the designer. And so I think that helps, being an architect on the client side, to work with architects. It's almost like it bridges this sort of divide between client and designer. And I think that really also helped me as a designer and practicing architecture at my own firm. It really helps understand how the client thinks and how the designer thinks as well, and how it can be brought together in a healthy and productive conversation and discussions.
A lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And you say it with a smile and a
Yes.
laugh. Let's talk about the British Council. They've been an integral part to so many people's lives. It sounds like they've been an integral part of moving things forward with you guys in the different projects. What would be that message you would give to them right now with their celebrating 90 years?
I think with the British Council, they've had a tremendous impact on multiple scales, on multiple lives, multiple age groups, whether, since we were students in school, but also later on as an important cultural stakeholder and cultural partner in the cultural ecosystem of Qatar. They've always been present, I would say, and I can only see that this presence is only going to grow, and it's only going to become more not only impactful but more enjoyable to have around, right? Whether it's a concert, whether it's another prize, the old Doha prize, whether it's something like this where we get to share everything that different people have been working on with the British Council. I can just see them that, yes, it's been many decades, and I can see many more decades of this cultural exchange continuing.
I must admit, I'm proud to be British, especially with the work that they've done.
Yes. Without
a shadow of a doubt. And I'm proud of the work that they've completed. I'm proud of what they've achieved and how they've achieved it. And I'm really privileged to be part of this with you, because people need to know about these type of things with the work that you're putting in and the jobs that you're doing and the jobs that they're coming in to help and do that knowledge sharing. It's I think it's breathtaking. I've been just taken back by the lives that they've changed.
No, I mean, it was also a great pleasure to be part of the Qatar UK Year of Culture in 2013. And I think what the Years of Culture try to do is not to end these sort of cultural partnerships when the year ends, when that specific year of culture ends, but that there's always legacy programs and legacy partnerships. And I think the British Council has been very successful and very sort of keen also on continuing the legacy of the Year of Culture. And yeah, looking forward to see what else they have for us.
Me too. But I know that it's all in safe hands. I know that. Now I've got a really difficult question for you, a really difficult one. Describing the British Council in one word and why.
It takes me back to school days.
So exactly that.
I would say past papers. No, should I say something that's a bit more, I would say very rooted. Rooted is the word. It's the British Council. It's about Great Britain. It's for Great Britain, but I think in Qatar, they're very rooted. They know the people of Qatar very well. They grew with the people of Qatar, and they've built so much and done so much with the people of Qatar. And they don't only understand the people, they understand the place very well. So I think rooted is the word. Is that a good one? Yeah.
That is fantastic. Okay. Let me tell you. And that is the perfect way to end this podcast. Perfect. Because you really are a special person. And I want to celebrate your successes because you've done so much, and just keep on being persistent and let people know when they're making a mistake, because I'm sure you do.
Sure.